Part 2. For the next few weeks, all of the moms made cakes and cookies and sold them at bake sales. Our dads sponsored car washes. All of us Junkyard kids used things we had gotten from Mr. Beeks and made gadgets to sell, but by that spring we had made enough money to buy that perfect motor. The next thing to do was set a date for launch. We wanted everyone in school to see it. That's when Gibby thought of the school science fair. Perfect, Jody said. He had started missing a lot of school, not feeling well. When he was there, Raven was at his sides. Sometimes she even helped him climb the stairs. We could launch it from the school roof, and it would fly right over the field where the fair is. The class cheered. Maybe, Mrs. Peterson said, but wait. This magnificent airship has to have a name. Everyone started calling out names like Fabulous Flyer and Windy Wings. Jody stood up. He sure looked pale. I think she needs to be called the Junkyard Wonder. Because we made it out of junk, and because we Junkyard Wonders made it. That plane is us. It was just a week later when Miss Peterson was late. She was never late. Her eyes were red and she looked sad. Please sit down. I have some very bad news. There was silence. We have lost Jody Beach. He passed away last night in his sleep. Then she put her face in her hands and cried. How? I managed to sputter. Raven and I held hands. Jody had a disease that made his body grow faster than it should. It just kept growing and growing so fast that his dear heart couldn't stop. Keep up. It just gave out. Mrs. Peterson answered. Later that day, the whole class went to the woods behind the school to collect flowers and to remember Jody. Now I know what the plane has to be called, a voice called out. At first, we couldn't figure out who was talking. Then, to our shock, we realized it was Raven. None of us knew she could talk. He wanted to be called the Junkyard Wonders. That's what it has to be. Tears rolled down her cheeks. All of us agreed. So how does Miss Peterson's help the class start to deal with Jody's death? Why do you think Raven decided that this was the time to speak? Why did she think this was the time to speak? Gibby's dad mounted the motor on the machine and placed it on a table at the back of his workshop. When we saw it, we all gathered around. It was so beautiful. We tried it out more than once. From the hill and back of Gibby's house, it seemed to work. But would it work from the roof of the school on fair day? And would we even get a chance to try? The stairway to the roof was always locked. Maybe Mr. Weeks, the janitor, could help us get to the roof. I think he will, Mrs. Peterson said, but it will have to be a secret. The day before the fair, we could hardly contain ourselves. Would newspapers be there? Scientists from a nearby university? We huddled together out on the playground, chattering about our plans for the launch. Cheese it. Look who's listening, Tom warned. It was Barton Poole. He'd heard everything. He leaned into Gibby's face. Your dad wears skirts, and he sneered. And no one's allowed on the school roof. Got it? No one. And I'm telling the principal about your stupid plans. And sure enough, when we got back to our schoolroom, the principal was waiting for us, and Barton Poole was with him. I have been informed of your plans for the science fair, Miss Peterson. There will be no launching from the school roof, and no fuel-driven airplanes anywhere on the school ground. They could be very dangerous. Mr. Weeks will give you your plane in the janitorial closet until the end of the school year. The principal turned on his heel and left the room. Mr. Weeks looked very sad as he carried the Wonder out of the room. Sorry, kids, he said. We were stunned. Raven started crying. This was going to be for Jody, she whispered. Mrs. Peterson said nothing for a long time. Then she began, we are going to launch the Wonder tomorrow, just as we planned. And from the roof, Mrs. Peterson told us to be at Mr. Weeks' closet tomorrow morning, the morning of the fair. So I wonder how Mrs. Peterson is going to pull off this plan. Our secret weapon turned out to be Mr. McDonald, Gibby's dad. If Mr. McDonald stayed with us during the launch, the principal was okay with it. We couldn't believe the good news. Mr. Weeks handed the Wonder to Gibby's dad. Let's take her up, he said to us. On the roof, we could see kids pouring into the field to look at science exhibits that were being set up. Raven pulled gorgeous silk streamers that she had hand-painted out of the bag and let them stay rolled up at the edge of the roof. Then, with Tom's help, Gibby and his dad put the Wonder in place. They carefully connected the engine to a car battery, then primed the pump to deliver the fuel from the tin sitting next to it, then into the engine, then pumped the fuel into the plane. We all stood back and watched. Maybe it'll go all the way to Lansing, I speculated. Maybe even to Detroit, Tom said. Maybe around the world. Whole world, Raven whispered. No, Gibby said with a grin. This baby's going all the way to the moon. When the whole school assembled on the field, Miss Peterson signaled Gibby's dad to begin the countdowns to start the engine. Mr. McDonald knelt in front of it while Gibby held the plane still, spinning the propeller over and over again. But the engine didn't catch on. We held our breaths. Pump the intake again, Mr. McDonald said to Gibby. He asked some of the boys to hold on to the Wonder. And you have to let it go at just the right moment or it will bank left or right. Understand? He spun the propeller a few more times, and then with a loud bang and a roar, the propeller started spinning. Blue smoke puffed out. Someone on the field yelled, and everybody looked up at the roof. That was when Raven unfurled her banners down the side of the building. Almost to speed, Gibby's dad hollered. 10, 9, 8. When he got to 1, Mr. McDonald hollered, Let her go! The Junkyard Wonder shot out of everybody's hands. It was airborne. First, it went over the field. Then, as suddenly as it started, it sputtered and seemed to stall. Then the engine roared to life again in a noise that was deafening. The Wonder's nose pointed straight up and up, straight toward the sun. We all ran to the wall of the roof and watched breathlessly as it streaked through the cloud cover, then appeared above, ever skyward, straight to the stratosphere. We all watched until it became a speck in the sky. Then we couldn't see it anymore. Even though the science department from the local university was there, along with the school board and the newspapers, for all of us. It was only Mrs. Peterson that mattered, and Jody. Tears glistened in Mrs. Peterson's eyes as she watched the Wonder climb into the heavens. Like I said, Gibby whispered, that baby's going straight to the moon. Mrs. Peterson had always been with me all these years, so have all those in my tribe. Tom went on to become the artistic director of the American Ballet Theater Company in New York. Raven became a textile designer and was eventually invited to Paris to design for the fashion industry. As for Gibby, well, he went on to become an aeronautical engineer for NASA. He helped design the lunar module for the Apollo missions. And me, I became a creator of books for children, for all of us. Mrs. Peterson was the wind beneath our wings. She was the alpha of our tribe. She was our compass. I saw Gibby in Houston a few years ago. We spent the afternoon recalling our time together in the junkyard and how Mrs. Peterson helped us believe in ourselves. Then Gibby's eyes misted over. He leaned into me and grinned as he said, Remember that photo that my dad took of all of us that day on the roof after we launched the Wonder? Well, Patricia, I stowed that photo aboard the lunar module in Apollo 11. All of us, Wonders, really did make it to the moon after all. So what does it mean to you? What does this ending mean to you?